What's up, everybody? Mannun here with Witch in the Working once again for an excellent, I guess we could call it an interview episode. And we're going to introduce our guest momentarily. And this is going to be a really exciting one because it's something that, again, I don't know much about at all. So, like I told you guys before, if I don't know about something, I don't try to pretend like I do. So I find somebody who knows something about it, however much they know about it, but our guest today is very fluent in this type of divination we're going to be checking out. So I hope you guys are excited about it, and I know I am because I never mess with this. So it's going to be really cool to see it and learn something about it. That being said, again, as I always mention, check out my Patreon if you haven't. I'm on Facebook as well, and this is unfortunately one of those videos that is not going to be scripted. Where you get the script and everything because it's a live video. Well, not live, but it's something that I didn't do a script for. In other words, so obviously. So that being said, let's get on with it. So, Mr. Guest, so tell us who you are. And well, who are you?
Certainly. So my craft name is Hermes. I'm a Gardnerian who lives in the eastern United States with my wife, who is also in the craft. And together we run a traditional Gardnerian coven and have been doing so for a number of years. So a little bit more about me. I first got into the craft when I was 19. I was a general pagan then. I was actually a Buddhist before that, and for a number of years. And I always wanted to be a Gardnerian witch ever since I first learned about Wicca. And I was attracted to the notion of, as a Gardnerian, you have an upline that you can go to for questions and to receive training. And I find that much more beneficial than just trying to wing it on your own.
So Buddhist.
Yes.
How do you find that mixing with Gardnerian craft or with Wicca, period?
Very, very well. One of the things I tell my students when they're training is the power of a witch lies in awareness. And the best way to cultivate that awareness is through mindfulness of breath and through meditation. I honestly believe the best thing you can do if you want to be proficient at magic is to master meditation. Master projection. So
you mentioned you were a Gardnerian Wiccan. How long have you been in the craft, period, like overall?
So I was actually first initiated over 10 years ago.
Did you just go straight to Gardnerian witchcraft, or were you like eclectic at first?
Well, I was eclectic at first, but not by choice. So I'd always wanted to be Gardnerian, so I shuffled around. The first coven I was in, I hesitate to use the term coven because he wasn't really in any sort of tradition or lineage. The second coven I was in, which I didn't get initiated into, I was still in training, was a Thelemic Alexandrian Gardnerian coven. Okay. Yeah, quite a mouthful. And then after that, it wasn't right, so I left. And then I looked on Witchfox, and there was this coven there. And I messaged the person. I said, "Hey, are you going to Free Spirit in Maryland?" And he said, "Yes, I am." I was like, "Great, I'd love to join. Let's meet up, and I can tell you a little bit about myself."
Okay, so you're bringing to us today. You're going to teach us something, all of us, including myself, about a really cool divination technique. So what are you bringing with you today to teach us?
Sure. Yep. So today I'm going to teach you all about how to read tea leaves. And it's interesting that I picked this up as a divination method because in order to get my second degree in my coven, I had to have one form of divination under my belt and give my high priestess a reading, and that reading had to come true. So I chose tea leaf reading because I first tried the tarot. And I found the concept of memorizing 78 different cards, 156 if you count the reverse cards, to be just a Herculean task, and I could not do it. So I switched over to runes, and the same problem arose. So I decided to shift my focus to scrying. which is taking a image and trying to read symbols, signs, and see other kinds of images within that. And I found that to be much more free-flowing and expressive and easier for me to grasp. And I've actually taught this form of divination to other people at various Gardnerian retreats and intensives. I find it worthwhile because I believe the scrying forms of divination allow you to meditate, clear your mind, and have a singular purpose of vision. You also get to enjoy a nice cup of tea when you're finished. So, tea leaf reading, as I mentioned before, it uses the spent tea leaves to form patterns or images in the bottom of a teacup. And these patterns are then interpreted, and then fortunes or predictions are made to the querent.
Okay, cool. So it's actually a type of scrying you mentioned.
Yes, it is.
Never have guessed that, but I guess that makes sense. I mean, yeah. So that's very cool. I've touched on what do they call this? Like I know that other than tea leaf reading, I think that's something like
Tasse-O-Mancy. Tasse coming from the word cup, and mancy being divination.
Is there one you can do with whiskey?
Actually, there is a form of divination that I know of that uses the spent mash from beer making.
Oh, no way.
Yep.
So where did, do you know anything about, as far as, I usually like to talk about the history of things and stuff like that. Do you know anything about where the tea leaf readings came from and, how old it is and whatnot?
Sure. Well, tea is among one of the oldest drinks, aside from water and beer, that we know that humans have ingested. It's actually, aside from water, the most commonly drunk form of liquid on the planet. And it actually dates back to as far as the Ming Dynasty in China, which lasted from around the 1360s to around the 1600s CE Common Era. And it first started with the introduction of a cup that's called a gaiwan, which is a little saucer I have here. It's actually formed in three parts. You have the saucer, you have the cup, and you have the lid. And in Eastern method of brewing, they put a lot more tea leaf in than water. And then this is seeped, and then it's then poured out into another vessel for drinking. So this was, in fact, the first teacup.
Wow. All right.
And as I mentioned, this gaiwan is still used today in Eastern brewing. Now, in the Victorian era, teacups became popular. And they became popular because obviously they have a handle here, which you can use without burning yourself to drink. And in this Victorian era, they actually became known as tossing cups. And we can see in historical literature that the matron of the house would sometimes read for servants in her tossing cup the tea leaves.
Why did they call it a tossing cup? Like tossing? Like throwing?
Yes, because one of the things you do once you get the liquid down is you'll swirl it around and then you'll dump it out. Oh. So you're taking the liquid and you're tossing it. And it's that act of tossing that allows the dregs to remain at the bottom of the cup for you to read.
Ah, okay, cool. That works. I get it. So when you're using the tea, when you're doing tea readings and whatnot, and you decide to take this on, do you have to use a specific kind of tea, or?
There's some teas that are recommended. For one, I would say do not use tea bags. Tea bags are widely regarded as inferior, not only from a tea leaf reading perspective, but also from a drinking perspective, because they're far too small to form adequate patterns on the cup. If you ever open up a tea bag, which I would encourage people to do, you'll find that it's mostly dust. What you want is whole leaf tea, which comes in bags like this. And later on, we'll be taking this down to a table view where I can show you this more in person. But really any black tea will do. This is Earl Grey cream. You can also use other type of teas like a red tea, which is basically black tea but in Chinese style tea. Oolong tea or also pu'er tea can also be used for readings.
So can you get like the loose leaf tea at like your neighborhood, like, shopping center, or is it?
Yes, you can. However, they're going to be in what's called pyramid bags. So you're going to have to sit there, cut open the pyramid bag so you get how many you want. It's not that bad unless you're running a retreat and have to do that for 50 bags because you're teaching a class.
Yeah.
But there are actually a lot of shops. One thing that I've been very pleased in since the removal of Tivana, a lot of homebrew shops for tea and spices have popped up all over. So if you do a quick search in Google Maps, I'm sure you'll be able to find a specialty tea shop in your area, and for sure they will have loose leaf tea.
Yeah, I bet you can. In fact, I even think for some reason I want to say I've even seen like loose leaf tea sold in bags at like your local Starbucks and stuff like that, along with the coffee, but they sell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely becoming more popular to brew it that way, and for good reason. It's better tasting, and it's really, quite frankly, better for the environment too.
Okay, cool. And something else that the people don't realize is it's better for doing tea readings.
That it is.
Before we go on to you demonstrating how to do this practice, is there anything that the querent would need to do special before you would read for them?
Not really, I would say. Not the querent. For the querent, I would say just go in with an open mind and a mind that's clear and receptive. That's the same if you do any divination, for that matter. Yeah. just go in with an open mind. The more receptive you are to the divination, the better results you will get out of it. And I know that kind of sounds hokey if you don't believe in this sort of a thing, but it is true.
So, go ahead and I think it would be cool I think that was a great time for you to go ahead and show us how you do this. Like, how do you do a tea leaf reading?
And we're down here at the teacup. So I mentioned before that your choice of cup matters. You don't want a normal coffee cup like this. That's because you can see the walls, they're straight, and that will make it difficult for the tea leaves to grab a hold onto the side of the walls. Also, you don't want what you'd normally think of as a proper English teacup. That's because as well you can see these walls are straight. You want something more sloping. This is a teacup that I use for the divination. You can see that the walls are much more sloped and not straight up and down. And this teacup I actually got as part of a set on Amazon, and we'll leave a link to this down in the description. So, as I mentioned before, you can use any type of tea for this tea leaf reading. But the best ones are going to be black, red, oolong, and pu'er. I would stay away from white, green, and herbal teas. That's because you're using a white cup, and the black tea leaves show up well against that, whereas the white and the green may not. So, as I am using Earl Grey cream tea here, you want to take 1 teaspoon and add it to the cup. After that, you are then going to take boiling water and pour it in. And then you're going to wait 2 to 3 minutes. And the reason why you're waiting 2 to 3 minutes instead of dumping it out is you want those dried tea leaves to absorb the liquid. If you don't wait those 2 to 3 minutes and you dump it out immediately, then there's a good chance that the tea leaves will go out baby with the bathwater, and you won't get a good read. Okay, then once the 2 to 3 minutes are up, then you'll have the querent sip the tea. And this is the hardest part of tea leaf reading, is learning to judge how much liquid you want left in the cup versus the tea. Too much liquid when you go to dump it, and all the leaves will fall out. Too little liquid and you go to dump it, and the not enough tea leaves will fall out, and you'll be left with this brown sludge at the bottom. So, drink it. Then you're going to dump out the liquid. And you want about 1 teaspoon to remain in the cup. And it's going to be a lot less than you think. A little bit. Okay, yes, let's try this. So, what you want to do, and you want to do this, not the querent, because this takes some skill in trying to learn to judge about how much leaf versus water. But what I like to do is you're going to swish it 3 times, and then immediately dump it into a sink or receptacle. But before you do this, you want to ask the querent what their query is. It could be something as simple as, should I initiate this person? It could be something as simple as, what do I see my future like? Generally, I find that questions that can be answered by yes or no are going to be easier to read. So if you're just starting out, I would recommend you stick to those types of questions. So let's give it a shot. Okay, so here we have a cup. Now, here starts the second hardest part of tea leaf reading, and that is actually doing the reading. So I still got some liquid here. So you can see that there's, it's all over the cup. I got one up here near the rim, I have one near the bottom, and one of the things I like about tea leaf reading is you can move the cup. So if you don't see anything up here, you can turn it around and then see if it makes sense right there. So in just looking at this cup, let's see here. So I'm seeing 2 things pop out at me. This thing right here looks to me to be a wasp or a hornet. You can see a body here, wings coming off here, a stinger there. And then over here, turning it around, this from this angle looks to be like a boat. Now, this is the thing about tea leaf reading. You generally aren't going to get a clear picture or even a crystal clear reading 100% of the time. Generally, at best, I'll only maybe see 1 or 2 symbols in an entire cup, if that. So we have a boat indicating travel. And we have a hornet indicating danger. Or, if you turn it around this way, it could also be read as another boat. Here's the hull, here's the bow sail, and here's the mainsail. So that's another one of the reasons I do like tea leaf reading, is because depending on your perspective, and depending on the querent's question, obviously, you can get vastly different readings trying to decipher what's in the cup.
That's so cool, though. I love the way that it's designed to where you see the tea leaves and you try to make an image out of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to kind of explain that image and any symbolism with it, or what it is to what you feel like it's going to be to the querent.
Yep, and you can add layers upon this. That's the interesting thing. So some people would say the stuff near the rim is going to be more immediate in your future than the stuff at the bottom. Other people, you can divide the cup into two. This side is past, this side is present. I've also seen things where they divide the cup into sort of a wheel of the year, or 12 sections representing the 12 months. And if a symbol happens to land within that slice of the pie, then you could say, oh, you're going to be receiving a journey in October. And you can read it like that. So there's many things you can do rather than just staring into the cup until a vision emerges.
So it's almost you're looking at the teacup in comparison to, for instance, like tarot cards. Like tarot cards have different they have different layouts, like different I forget what you call it, but like different layouts, in other words. Like there's the Celtic cross, and then there's the tea readings are almost the same way, but with dividing the cup.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll be talking more about this once we come back up and I discuss where you can find tea leaf readings near you.
Okay, so I'm ready to jump back up if you are, unless you...
Yeah, okay. Back? Excellent. I love it when technology works. Okay.
So one of the questions I got is there places you can go to get your reading done, or is it is in that specific in Tasse-O-Mancy, or is it
So I'm gonna preface this by saying not really. And tea leaf reading is less popular than other forms of divination like tarot cards, palmistry, or even runes. And I've been thinking about that for some time, and I think I've come up with a few reasons. Number one, it's scrying. Scrying is inherently less popular for your average psychic than divination methods that rely on discrete elements. For one, scrying takes a long time. As you saw, rather than laying out a spread, 1, 2, 3, we were at that teacup for a good probably 2 to 3 minutes. And I wasn't even trying to go into that. And also with scrying, with any form of scrying, you don't get a hit every single time. And that can be disappointing to a querent who just paid $20-$50, and you have to say, oh, sorry, I didn't get anything, let's try again. You know, that makes you look kind of charlatan,
right,
as a way. And also, as I said before, you may only get 1 or 2 symbols, and those symbols may take up to 5 minutes to see if you have a particularly hard cup. And then after you see those symbols, you still have to interpret them.
right.
So tea leaf reading is a lot slower than your tarot cards, and it's also less engaging. So querents are watching you stare at a teacup every which way for 3 to 5 minutes, rather than seeing a Celtic cross spread. Ooh, what's the next card? What's the next card? That's engaging for both the reader and the querent. Tea leaf reading is a much more intimate experience, best done among friends than done by people off the street. And for that reason, it's not as flashy as for the town psychic. Although I will say they are out there. I did a quick search on Google Maps, which I would recommend anybody use if they're looking for tea leaf readers. And I did find a few within the Northeast.
So is there any websites or something, books or anything you can recommend if somebody wants to learn how to dive further into tea leaf readings?
Oh, I thought you'd never ask. So there's a number of books. So one of the first books I would recommend is Reading the Leaves by Sandra Maria Wright and Linny Marama. This goes through the history of tea leaf reading, goes through things to watch out for, and in the back, what I particularly like, has a glossary of common symbols that you will see in the cup and their interpretations.
Oh, cool.
If you want to get into the background of tea, I would recommend The Healing Power of Tea by Carol Dow, which, interestingly enough, is published by Llewellyn, of all people. And I say that because there is not a drop of magic or divination contained in this book. It is simply a book about tea, which I find interesting for Llewellyn to put out. But something I want to stress to the viewers that are watching here is the ability to pick up on symbols and their meanings. Because if you're just trying to memorize the symbols that are in the book, you're no better than trying to memorize those 78 tarot cards. You have to innately understand what the symbols are and why they are. So I'll give you an example, Mannun. An anchor can be historically interpreted as a symbol of hope. We can see this going back to the 1600s in Freemasonry. Do you know why that is?
No.
Okay, yep. If you're a layperson, you might say that it's because sailors had hope their ship was in port or something like that. And it would surprise most people that association of anchors to hope actually comes from the Bible. Hebrew chapter 6, verse 19, which hope we have as an anchor of the soul, be sure and steadfast, and which entereth into that within the veil. So this is important when you study symbols because it allows you to have a better connection to them and to your querent. Which is why if you're looking for symbols, I can think of no better person to recommend than Carl Jung. Another good book is Psyche and Symbols by C.G. Jung. And also Mannun is Symbols by, again, Carl Jung. This will give you the symbolism, but it also, as we were saying before about how the work changes you, how training changes you, learning these psychology also changes you in thinking about archetypes in various ways and universally recognized symbols.
Yeah.
Just following.
Like, to me, when you said anchor, like, to me, if you were to say what does an anchor mean to you personally, I would have said foundation, attachment, like steadfast, type deals. So it's like I see how like we can have different interpretations of things like that, and
we certainly can, and there's value in that for reading that way. But there's also value in recognizing that there are common symbols throughout history that form a shared tradition.
Yes.
That, for example, an egg being a fertility symbol, right. There's a reason for that. Just a couple of two more books that I would recommend. Symbolism, the Universal Language by J.C. Cooper goes across symbolism across different cultures and their connective threads. And finally, the last one, the Bards and Nobles Special, the Encyclopedia of Secret Signs and Symbols by Aldi Nozedar. This contains various just pure lists of symbols and their associations, and it's good for looking up things that are obscure.
Yeah, very cool, awesome. Okay, so it really has a lot of like once you get the symbol, being able to translate that symbol.
Yes, and being able to translate it quickly. Because if you're doing a reading for someone, it doesn't do good when you say, "Oh, stop! I got to look this up in my book."
Exactly. No, for sure. Yep.
It's like I paid this guy how much?
Yeah, that's one of the ways. Like when I do in the form of divination I do for people, I'll get a lot of times symbols, but I've also mastered being able to get a symbol and spit it out. And what I feel like it means and whatnot, regardless of what hits me in the head. I think that's a big part of it, like being able to do that.
For sure, and as I'm sure scrying is a completely different beast than
totally is. Yep. So thank you so much, Hermes, for showing us how to do tea leaf readings or Tasse-O-Mancy. Is that how you say it?
Tasse-O-Mancy. Yep.
Tasse-O-Mancy. Thank you so much for showing us how to do that. I definitely learned quite a bit, and I know a lot of those people out there learned it. This is one of those things, again, I never really touched on very much. So it was very cool. Love it. I'm actually want to give it a shot now. So especially since I know it kind of ties in with reading images. In other words, this is going to be so stupid, but it's really what came to my head. It kind of sounds like it's my cup of tea because it involves seeing images and relaying the images, which is how I do my type of divination anyhow. My natural type of divination I do, doing channeling, is literally seeing images, but usually in my head and relaying them. Now it's just looking into a cup. So it's in seeing an image, which I, like you said, I kind of saw something different. Like where you saw a wasp, I actually saw a man riding a horse.
Oh, interesting.
So what I think was interesting, though, is that everything we saw in that cup had to do with travel at one point.
I was just going to say that. Yep.
So it's kind
You got the boat, the horse. Yep. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So it's kind of neat. And at the very top, I saw a dragon. You know.
Oh, interesting.
There, it was a dragon.
Yeah, the lip. Mm.
But so yeah, it's interesting how we saw different things, but how two of the things were very much tied in with each other. Hell, maybe even more if we actually talked about it. But okay, cool. So thank you so much for joining us, and everybody out there, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe and ring that little bell to be reminded of future episodes to come. And I love you guys and gals, and thank you again so much, Hermes, for sharing all this information with us, and we'll see you in the next video. See you later.